one of the key things that I'll always highlight is, along with the globalization and outsourcing, we all know now, right from a pin or even a battery for a AAA or a AA battery onward, everything that we are using today, let's say in India, can be actually sourced from any part of the world, and which is already happening in fact. Similarly, if you look at actually the product's life cycle, even let's look at some of the automotive life cycle. Every month almost, the automotive actually comes up with the cars are coming up with newer models. There are a lot of features that are on offer for a customer and all that. If you really just wind back ourselves, let's say about 20 years back, and we used to have the good old, if you actually gentlemen remember actually what was called Bajaj Chetak, Bajaj Super, Bajaj, whatever the models were there those days. If you remember those days, we used to actually go and book a Bajaj Chetak and kind of wait almost 3 years, 5 years. I know there are cases where people used to wait for 10 years for a particular model. That was, if you really think about that, it is even, absurd to even think about some of those scenarios now. What do we do now? You actually, let's say, you like a Honda scooter. You walk into a Honda showroom. And then you would like a black color Honda, and the salesman says, sir, by the way, it is not in the showroom now. We'll be able to get you in about 3 days' time. Do you want to wait for 3 days there? I don't think so. You'll walk into Suzuki. If Suzuki doesn't offer, you will actually walk into another company, in fact. So the amount of, choice or the level of actually options available for customer is humongous, which has put a lot of pressure back on actually the product life cycle itself. I think, you're also seeing another phenomenal growth in the area of mobile phones. Every day you will see actually number of newer models getting cheaper, offering lots of variety and features and all that. In fact, I was just checking with our 9 Media team. If I could do this webinar using my Android phone or actually iPhone or something, I'm sure that day is not too far away. So I guess the shorter product life cycles have put in a lot of actually challenge for people in the back end, so that we will be able to service our customers in a profitable as well as in a very happier manner, really. Similarly, another area that we can look at is the regulations, and regulations are in fact by the day they're actually getting changed and then becoming more customer friendly, consumer friendly, which means the regulations, whether it's a compliance or on a quality or on an environmental actually side of things, regulations are also becoming a significant challenge for both manufacturers and retailers. And of course, there is definite the focus on raising fulfillment costs and agility. We cannot afford to have months of inventory, weeks of inventory, days of inventory anymore. If you really look at the agility part particularly, I guess there are a number of in fact case studies where, if you look at automotive, for example, if you remember, there used to be actually a weekly inventory held back in the good old days of whether it's a Fiat or in fact, our great ambassador car, even, abroad also, Toyota, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, they all used to have actually 1 week, 1 week worth of inventory, 15 days worth of inventory and so on. And what did that go into? It went into actually just in time. And the just in time, it has become now synchronous manufacturing, which is they will not have more than 1 hour worth of inventory. Whatever it takes for an hour's production, it is now available online. That's the reason if an ancillary goes down in today's case, entire automotive line gets shut down. This is actually the height of agility. I guess lean manufacturing and agile manufacturing, automotive have really given us a great roadmap in terms of how to be agile, how to do just in time, how to be very, very cost effective and so on. Similarly, channel convergence is also happening big time. I'm sure most of you have been observing the growth of Amazon and Flipkart in India. They too are kind of the indicators, in fact, to understand what level the channel convergence is happening now, and it is giving every brick and mortar retailer or an FMCG company, in fact, money for run. They are, in fact, they have to become now multi-channel offering. They have to really get into modern retail. They have to get into e-commerce now in order to survive. So this has become another, significant challenge. And what is most important for you is emerging technologies and the integration. I am sure with the kind of technology that we are talking in today's age, which was not even heard of 10 years ago. I remember the good old days of 2000, 2001, when I was actually trying to set up one of the first contract supply chain or contract logistics centers in India for Samsung and then IBM. Those days, people did not even understand what a DC is, distribution center or what a warehouse is. People used to refer to them as godowns. Even now in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, they talk about godowns. But then, those godowns have now become high-tech, modern warehouses, distribution centers, and so on. So, if you really walk into one of our modern warehouses, be it in Delhi or Bangalore or Bhiwandi, wherever it is, you will see a lot of technology being put into the place. Which means whatever we were using the unskilled labor or semi-skilled labor to do this, now the technology has replaced a lot of that work, lot of that intelligence in fact. And this also emphasizes the importance of integration, whether it's back into our ERP or to one of the supply chain systems or to the CRM systems and so on. So I guess there is actually a whole host of challenges that, as an industry we need to actually cater to and then be prepared to. So if I look at the next couple of slides, if I look at it, we are looking at the retail boom. The retail boom that's been happening in India. We all know the modern retail in India, which has provided newer markets in the last probably 10, 14, 15 years Once again I vividly remember the good old days of when one big bazaar was opened in each city, and that was like a revelation. It was like full of people. Even now the malls are full of people for a variety of reasons. And whatever modern retail brought to the market about 10 years or 12 years ago, similarly now the e-commerce has now become that. E-commerce has really become the opportunity of the century. I'm pretty sure most of our current audience, I'm sure you'll be spending at least 5 minutes, in fact, on an e-commerce portal on a daily basis. Even if you didn't want to do anything, you will come, you'll be hit with those e-commerce sites. The moment you open Google, the moment you want to go into any of the websites, those e-commerce sites follow you. For example, if you would ever try to buy a sofa set, you'll really be almost frustrated to see the same sofa following you even after 3 months. So that has become now, such a key part of our life. So retail follows us, wherever we go, whether it's through a mobile phone or our laptop or even in our traditional shopping also. Similarly, what the manufacturers have done in the last probably 10 to 15 years is cashing in on the new distribution opportunity. They're also trying to understand the challenges between distribution channels, the conventional one versus the current demand. And the retail has been growing, This is a phenomenal aspect. This is one of the key reasons why people like myself, the reason we came back to India. For example, I used to live in Australia for the last, 16, 17 years, 3 years before. The last decade and a half, the growth of retail has not been into double digits at all. If you have had 3% to 5%, growth, that is a phenomenal, growth in those countries. As you know, Japan has been running on a negative, interest rate or a zero interest rate for almost now, more than a decade and a half now. So, whereas in India or Brazil or some of the BRIC countries and so on, the amount of growth available is phenomenal. So, India we've been seeing very comfortable 25, 30, 35, 40% growth in the last probably more than 5 years in fact, which is another great opportunity for every retailer, not only domestic retailers but even also the global ones. Similarly, by 2015, what people are predicting is that this is going to become the most attractive retail categories, which are grocery, food, apparel, consumer goods, home decor, furnishing, and you can also, probably add the furniture or the, hard furnishing and so on into this, because now IKEA is opening their first stores, presumably in, Hyderabad and so on. Now, the retail actually also came in variety of forms. There were specialty stores, there were supermarkets, there were hypermarkets, and also the department stores and convenience stores also. The last 2.5 or 3 years, as my colleagues in 9.1 Media also can confirm this, there is a significant focus on tier 2 and tier 3 cities, in fact, as a high potential area. Now, we were actually doing a similar kind of a seminar, or in fact a round table, I think back in Gurgaon a few months ago, wherein there were almost like close to 30-40 SME and all the retailers were present there. The common theme that came out through all of them was the focus on tier 2, tier 3 cities, in fact. So the retail boom is well and truly not only in India, but it is actually here there to stay for a long term also. So I guess moving from the previous slide into the new retail, if you look at some of the stats, actually how the entire thing evolved. It used to be like a rural reach where the shanties used to be there, and also it went into the departmental stores, and then there were also, like, I vividly remember back in Bangalore, even in the 1980s, there used to be a supermarket called Janata Bazaar. So Janata Bazaar was one of the first ones where it was a true supermarket where you could take a trolley and then go and pick whatever you wanted. That was again, a revelation at that stage. Similarly, it moved into a lot of modern retail formats, right from the big bazaars and the Reliances and the Aditya Birla More, and all the smaller formats also, like the Food World, Subiksha, and then Vishal and all those ones. I guess now we are actually at the helm of e-commerce revolution actually, which is what is going to once again change the complete, not only retail, but very much the supply chain and very much even the IT also. This is another slide, just symbolizing actually on the consumer goods growth in the India, and it is probably there's a little bit of a repetition actually in the first part. The second part is where we are talking about e-commerce or the online firms, how they have flooded the market, and then only some of the very key large players like Flipkart, Amazon, they are actually growing here. And one of the things what is really driving them quite a bit is the penetration of mobile technology into each and every corner, in fact, each and every village into the Indian space. Now, from the retail trends, if we move into the supply chain management, let's say, what is supply chain management? Supply chain management is, as it is being displayed on the slide, it is actually to do with everything between planning all the way to the customer service. It really looks at sourcing, procurement, conversion, and then also bringing into the warehouses, and then moving into the stores, and then perhaps even moving into the direct to customers and so on. So supply chain management, connects you from end to end, truly end to end, all the way from what we call as sourcing to shelves in the retail space, or we can also say sourcing to even the homes also. So there is a lot of coordination that is required between channel partners and then suppliers, intermediaries, and then also a third-party logistics service providers such as your warehouse providers or the transport providers, and then also it links the customers, especially in case of some of the home furnishing and so on, where the home deliveries are to be done. Customers also become a part of the supply chain management. Now, in essence, what supply chain does is it integrates supply and demand management within and across companies. Let's see actually how it does some of that. So these are all once again, whatever consists of actually the supply chain management, which we just went through that. Interestingly, the couple of other, important mentions here is the investors also. I mean, investors also have become now a, significant part of the supply chain management because they also want to convert their cash into product back into the cash with profits. Let's look at the supply chain actually practices, how it evolved, from production when it went into the inventory side of things, and then you actually make something and convert it in, and then you convert it into inventory. In production, you always look at your batch size, your lot size, and then how many you need to do it and when to produce it, what are the schedules and so on. You will align your raw materials and other things into that, and you produce that. When you produce actually an inventory, and then when you keep it, you will also have decisions to be made. Where do you keep it and how do you keep it and when do you move it to where? which is where the third part comes into that, the location side of things. Of course, all this movement happens with the help of the transportation, and the pivotal part, which is very pertinent to you actually know as the audience right now, is the information, which is where the role of IT comes in a big way. If you look at actually the supply chain management in its effective supply chain management versus efficient supply chain management, these are some of the actually the basic differences where whether you want to go for efficiency or you want to go for effectivity. So the responsiveness actually very much reflects the effective way to produce things, to keep inventory and to store it in locations, and how do you transport and how do you share the information. These are some of the, the key things that we'll have to actually take into consideration when we are looking at the supply chain management. Now, with that supply chain management basics, if you really move into some of the challenges for retail in India, all of us realize that supply chain is actually very much underdeveloped. When we look at the parts of it, when we look into the logistic challenges, you will understand more about this, where we will be talking about the poor road infrastructure or the rail infrastructure problems, and the sea infrastructure is almost non-existent in India, which is which can have a major role in reducing the cost and so on. And we also realize the cost of real estate actually these days in India, it's skyrocketing. I mean, you will see majority of the warehouses at least about 50 to 100 kilometers away from the CBD or the central business district in every major town across India. People are actually also trying to still build godowns rather than warehouses or distribution centers, mainly because there is lack of actually knowledge and understanding, as well as cost also plays a very important role. I have seen some of the largest even FMCG companies going into some of these village godowns or whatever, just for the sake of price point and so on. Another key area actually where it's going to be a huge challenge for us, all of us in fact, is the lack of talent and talent development focus itself. I mean, you might be surprised actually that quite a few of us in the industry, we are even pitching with the new government, central government, Modi's government, wherein we are also saying we need to actually bring in something like an apprenticeship actually into logistics as an industry. I think there was also another delegation went and met and Nitin Gadkari as well, in terms of actually pressurizing them to actually get into the talent development focus, which is seriously missing right now. And the third party service providers such as transporters, warehouse service providers, or courier services and all that, even now by and large they are quite unstructured. There is no common kind of a methodology or common kind of a policies that they adhere to and then kind of deliver the services on an acceptable level. And transport industry is heavily unregulated. So there are no kind of benchmarks or no kind of actually SLAs that you can actually enter into the transport industry as a body. There is also consumer protection actually, which is right now on the rise. The consumer protection and also the Jago Grahak Jago kind of actually initiatives from the government itself is trying to not only actually educate the consumers about their rights and other things, also consumer protection will put in quite a bit of actually compliance measures, actually compliance rules and regulations, actually how you can do retail or how you can do supply chain in India also. And of course the technology awareness is slowly coming there, but we are yet to actually go a long way. And this is another important last point that I've mentioned here. Myths about employment versus technology. We can actually dwell deep into that, when we go into the later slides, but definitely there is, some skepticism, especially around, villages or actually the peripheries of Indian cities about, they say the moment you bring technology, it will, take away our employment. That also has become a challenge in fact. Now, particularly, why we are talking about inventory is because if you ask me inventory is nothing but cash. A company, whenever you actually produce a balance sheet and so on, you will also be showing all these things, and then inventory is nothing but cash. So obviously you have to manage the inventory very well. Inventory has to be managed very well to do two things. On one side, you need to reduce cost. That means, you need to hold less inventory. On the other hand, actually, you need to protect sales, and then that means, you hold more inventory, which clearly actually, creates a conflict. If you want to actually, just dwell, a minute or so into this, let's say, like we were talking about the scooters earlier. Let's say, you wanted actually a black scooter from Honda. If Honda has to service every customer that comes across every variation or different color requirements and so on, that means they need to hold a lot more inventory than what they can hold currently. At the same time, I'm not sure whether, some of you might be aware of this. There are auto companies where auto companies, do not give you any commission or any cash as an incentive for selling their vehicle. For example, there is one two-wheeler company in India which is very popularly known. I think every 5th bike they give you free. You sell actually, or every probably maybe not 5th. I think every 10th bike or whatever, the 11th one is given free or something like that. So you have to actually sell the 11th bike to make money for yourself. So there are actually quite a few nonsense, in fact, with which you have to work, wherein inventory holding becomes actually paramount decision for you to hold, whether it is less or more, how much is it. In fact, most of our planning departments these days, they spend significant amount of time in judging the right levels of inventory, whether it is 10 days of shelf stock or 15 days of shelf stock, and less or more and so on. Another case study probably I can quote here is Chroma, which is very well known for their agile inventory holding and so on. They used what is called as actually, you might be familiar with this terminology, which is theory of constraints, TOC. They actually have modeled their inventory with the TOC theory. The theory of constraints actually modeled, Funda, they have actually used that. And they have reduced their, I think, inventory from about 29, 30 days into somewhere around, I think, around 20 days or 22 days of inventory is what last I heard. Their intent was to reduce it to almost, less than 10 days inventory. And if you can do that and yet actually not lose your customers and protect your sales, you would have done a fantastic actually job. So how do you resolve this conflict is what we need to answer as logisticians. What is the optimal lot size? What is the safety stock? What is the optimal classification of it? And what should be the replenishment, policies and so on? And how do we also reduce excess inventories? And what do we also set as a SLA itself, the service level expectation itself? If you look at some of these next few slides, I'll probably run them through a little bit fast, just for the sake of, in fact, identifying the key challenges. I'll put this slide up. These are all some of the logistic challenges. Outsourcing key functions, there is actually lack of qualified service providers in this area, and there are number of consumer goods, actually IT&T firms, case studies are there wherein they have to live with some of these. These pictures are obvious. These are the pictures which I was suggesting to you. It might be harsh to look at, but then that's unfortunately the reality also. I can quote actually from my current experience also. Let's say we would have actually put in 1,000 styles into stores. Out of 1,000 styles, at least 100 styles will never make it to the shelves because of logistical issues. Whether it's actually somebody has hijacked the vehicle, or it's gone missing actually in the routing process, or there is actually a mismatch supplied by the vendor. This has become a very, very common problem wherein we will lose actually at least 5 to 10% of the merchandise what we intend to put on the shelves also. So if you look at continued, in fact, issues with the logistics, there is in fact some of the warehousing issues are there. There are warehouse transfer issues are there, and then there are also export related issues are also there. Elements of transport cost actually is also offering or posing a huge problem currently, mainly because there are various elements of that. If you look at this slide and the next slide, wherein you will also see faster is costlier. Longer means it is costlier. In fact, we have a very less, in fact, movement that is happening using sea, because sea is probably the cheapest, mode of transport. At the same time, packaging has to be much more India compliant mainly because of the situation of the roads and then the way we are going to be actually, going around some of the rainy season and so on. So there are a lot of actually cost-related elements in fact within the transportation particularly. These are some of the modes wherein, we are also looking at cost versus coverage versus the speed. I guess, you can look at that. Something like rail actually is probably medium reliable, but then the speed is also medium, and then the damages are very high. You can ask me actually why the damages will be very high on rail. That is mainly because of the packaging actually that we have been used to. There are significant initiatives that is undertaken by the railway department. This number hopefully is going to go down to either 2 or ideally 1. Abroad, these rail actually transport is highly reliable and the damages are very, very minimal in fact. This is one case study actually where I wanted to just highlight that not everything is actually looking very bad. There are some very, very encouraging and then evolving actually trend in the transport industry itself. For example, the picture, whatever you're seeing, the Volvo company trucks, they are going to offer actually like it's a 6-axle Volvo trailer with almost like 3 to 4 times the payload, and these can also kind of cover longer distances also. Given the fact that the current government or actually the previous governments have also built in the golden quadrilateral across India, where the speeds used to be around 150 to 200 earlier, now they can almost reach 300 to 400 kilometers per day. This is really encouraging. I think one company which has driven this opportunity through is Volvo, and you can also see some of the Mahindra trucks also with lot of maneuverability as well as payload increase and so on. I think transport industry is also actually trying to use the opportunity in its favor. This is another poor reading, I guess, in terms of the number of highways or number of actually the number of in fact transportable roads. You can see it in this next slide. You can see out of around 62,000 kilometers of rail, so the growth is actually is around 9,000 kilometers in 50 years. This is probably perhaps the slowest actually growth. That is the reason why I think current government and even Mr. Modi is talking about connecting every town across India in 24 hours or under 24 hours and so on. I think this has to happen in fact. It is a must for our growth in fact. Similarly, I think in terms of road, if you look at it, look at the roads in fact, less than 2% or only 2% of national highways is 4 lanes. That talks about, a great opportunity India as a country to improve on the national highways, which can give us almost like 400 to 500, kilometers per day on the surface transport speeds and so on. A couple more actually, details on the cost of transportation and so on. And again, the inland container depots are another, key part in the entire supply chain wherein you can bring some bonded merchandise into any of the inland depots like Bangalore or Delhi or Hyderabad and so on, which are not actually on the coast. The ICDs, play a very, very major role there. So if I quickly move into now, I think 3PL service providers, I'll just skip for the moment. I'll just come back to it actually later. I'll just move into technology right away because I think we need to cover quite a bit in technology. In the next probably 10 minutes or so, I need to cover quite a bit of this. If you really look at technology, what is the technology doing? It has to ensure smooth flow of goods and services through the supply chain. And then it has to ensure the warehousing methodology is as agile as possible so that investment levels are optimal as well as inventory holding is minimal. Real-time inventory management becomes very, very key, not only to manage, in fact, the inventory or conversion of inventory into cash, but also to manage the customer expectations. Technology also plays a very key role in efficient supplier management. As a matter of fact, we as a company in Landmark Group, we are rolling out a supplier management portal right now as we speak, and we are trying to onboard almost about 300 vendors onto this supplier management tool, wherein from the time the purchase order has been issued, we will be almost tracking their progress online all the way it comes into our network, and also they get their payment. It is all online and completely transparent arrangement. Merchandise planning, promotions, forecasting, replenishment, as some of you may be, very well aware that these are all some of the very, very key piece of technology in any modern FMCG or a retail or any industry for that matter. There is also a whole host of MIS, requirement along with business intelligence. In fact, there are a number of, business intelligence or business analytics companies now trying to get into this space to make most of actually the opportunity currently. So if you really look at a little bit more deep into the technology in supply chain, what are some of the things that we've been using? I mean, as most of you are aware of it, EDI, the electronic data interchange, actually formed almost like a revolutionary connect between various parties, be it actually a supplier or a service provider or a manufacturer or a retailer and so on. We used to send a lot of files through the EDI interchange and so on, which almost got converted into now the XML formats, or most popularly these days on internet. So even in internet, for example, these days I can scan a barcode in one of my DCs, which I can immediately pick it up in real time actually in my head office also. So how did we do the migration from MRP to ERP? I'm sure quite a few might be familiar with the MRP concept also. Earlier the MRP2 used to be there, where various business units were connected. But now ERP is a far more efficient and far more actually like integrated way to connect all pieces of information, be it financial, or the supply chain management, or the human resources management, customer relationship management, or even the manufacturing itself. I guess ERP now has been playing a pivotal role there, and I can't even imagine any company running without, I guess, ERP now. Now, if I look at technology in supply chain particularly, what is one of the most common technology that is used in supply chain? It is a barcoding. Barcoding is probably one of the easiest and then easily understood as well as simplest technology to actually deploy. Now, why barcoding, you might ask me? It is basically, for these obvious reasons, the transfer rate is very, very quick. Accuracy is very important for us. You just imagine an SS18 or one of those actually barcodes where they have a 18-digit product number. Just think about actually the complexity to enter an 18-digit number. Mind you, these 18-digit numbers are not entered by any engineers or any qualified people. They are mostly done by semi-skilled or even unskilled people. Imagine the number of actually errors that can actually prop up during that. So accuracy plays a huge role in utilization of the barcodes. And less labor, instead of actually, you can use a completely unskilled labor. All you have to teach him is actually how to hold the gun and then scan the barcode actually on the box. How does it actually reduce the stocks? Barcode actually gives you a better visibility. Barcodes actually give you a lot more accurate information. It also gives you quick information. Therefore, you don't have to have everything in front of you. You can order for the stocks and they can come in actually quickly into your stores, quickly into your depots and so on. Therefore, your overall inventory holding in the pipeline can be reduced dramatically by using the technology. Customer service also, has become, much faster and accurate with the usage of, barcodes also. And another important actually, aspect is the verification of the information. It is also, of course, important for monitoring and control as far as the information is concerned with the help of the barcode. If you remember, actually, just the simplest example is, if you had to do a price check in a supermarket, you actually had to take that product and then enter that number and then, then look at the item, cross-verify that, and then also look at the price. What do they do these days? They just actually take this product, or many times, in fact, there is already a portable handheld terminal which they can scan and immediately give you the verification or give you the monitoring and controlling on the inventory or on the pricing and so on. This is another actually important slide on technology in supply chain. The CRM, the customer relationship management, has again, this has become again a very, very important aspect. Also, it has become a key to the survival of many companies. For example, if you talk about a retail company or an e-commerce company, this entire CRM actually holds the key to the growth and also the profitability of the company. Why? Because whether it's sales and marketing or customer support or employee support, or if you want to actually manage some of the knowledge management and do the order processing and all that has become actually an important aspect to which CRM almost plays a pivotal role into the whole thing. This is actually largely, you might be surprised, to see so many modules that are available actually as a piece of technology to manage supply chain alone. This is probably only high level. In each of these areas, I have at least seen another 4 to 6, modules, in fact, further down the line. For example, if you really look at warehousing particularly, within warehousing, there are slotting management, there are labor management, there are performance management. There are multiple modules actually underneath that also. So if you really look at supply chain, now a lot of companies have been developing their niche in each of these areas. Supply planning itself is actually another key area where people have been looking at promotions, and then promotions actually planning. They're also doing product lifecycle management actually in the supply planning side of things. So there are each of these, it has got multiple modules underneath that. You can see from this deck the amount of technology or the amount of opportunity for the technology players within the supply chain. Now, if you quickly look at, what are the system capabilities that we are looking at? By the way, the picture what you're seeing here is one of the pictures, what is it called, a finger scanner. Now, there are actually instances wherein warehouse staff needs to use both of their hands, for which they either use actually a finger scanner like this one, or there is also another technology called voice technology, which was perhaps actually, it was there in a couple of slides earlier. There was one voice module which was there, which they use it like a headphone and then kind of do a hands-free operation, and they need to talk to the computer to actually tell to go and pick XYZ and how many numbers and so on, and then they can confirm that. So there are actually pieces of technology such as these finger scanners or the voice picking and so on, which will not only give you a greater flexibility, but also it is equally accurate, if not better than the barcoding itself. Now, from system capability perspective, retail operations, in fact, you need the analysis, and also you need to review multiple things such as channel selling, multi-channel selling, and so on. There are also the strategic planning, forecasting, and replenishment actually that you need to do. As we discussed earlier, we need to do the supplier management also. Then there is huge work actually within the four walls of the warehouse, right from planning and layouting and also the maintenance. There are also the processes itself, like the inbound process, the picking process, order processing, and then ship, pick, pack, and dispatch, what we call as. Those processes are there. And there is of course also the labor management, which has now become very big in Western countries like in US and so on. There is actually a very high dependency on the labor management, which provides you a lot of insight into how do you plan the labor activities, how do you monitor that, and also how do you do the execution in terms of if you analyze that there is actually X amount of work still pending 3 hours before the shift closure, you actually go and depute some more people, or you extend the shift and so on. So there are a whole host of actually labor management initiatives, in fact, using the technology. And also the performance management, as we earlier said, a lot of actually analytics such as the reports, KPIs, alerts, and data analysis also is become actually an integral part of the whole thing. Now, if you look at actually the technology, the other thing I was just earlier saying, in terms of supplier management, these days what has actually happened also is, earlier the good old days, used to send in fact the email an order or send an order through the fax or something like that, which used to be used by the vendor, and then vendor would be in fact confirming, or vendor would be actually confirming that he will be she will be able to ship it with the schedules and so on. All of these actually has become now online. I will have a purchase order and I will make it available for the vendors to look at it. In fact, there are instances where if it is a multiple vendors producing the same thing, vendors can even go and bid for the order also. So those opportunities are also available now with the vendor portals. Similarly, in case of supplier services, there are multiple actually advantages that the supplier also can get, such as if there is any packing instruction, if there are any price point advantages, or if there is any let's say particularly for Indian case, if there are any taxation compliances, if there are any tax components which will either encourage him to do more or less and so on, all those opportunities are available for him without any discussion. These are all the features available in a standard format which vendor can actually use it, qualify his actually making or make to order actually proposition, and then kind of take an informed decision. What it also does is actually gives us a lot of performance tracking of the vendors, whatever we call a vendor rating and so on. We will also track their performances based on the schedule, the service delivery, the quality, the number of mistakes they have done, the number of actually the shortages and excesses that they have sent and so on. So we can have a whole host of actually features based on which we can do the rating. And of course, the entire vendor management portal offers us a very, very collaborative way of working. In fact, in terms of whether it is a schedule or even acceptance to actually produce, or even change of any colors and change of fabrics and so on, or there are quality issues and so on, the whole thing can be actually encompassed into the into the supplier management and do this. So all in all, what I'm trying to say is, overall, retail offers a phenomenal opportunity, in fact, into the into the modern not only the supply chain or even the industry itself. And I think IT plays a very, very, very important role in the whole scheme of things, right from deploying a computer or a barcode system, or even actually some of the unfortunately due to lack of time, I'm not able to cover some of the automation what we can actually do in warehouses and so on. But there is a whole host of opportunity, and then without the help of IT, the supply chain, not efficiency, effectivity itself is actually being questioned right now. So there is no supply chain without actually the IT. So what we are going to see in the next, probably the next 3 to 5 years, I mean, we can definitely be seeing the huge usage of actually WMS, which is warehouse management system, a high level of usage of transport management system, and then almost like a global usage of track and trace, which means you'll be using GPS-based systems, and then some of the vehicle tracking systems and so on. And most importantly, every organization will go into best-in-class supply chain, both planning and then execution systems, in fact. So I guess with that kind of a overall summary, I would like to actually just stop it here and then take your questions actually, in fact.